Hi students, this video is going to be all about supply. The previous one's all about demand. I'll cover some of the same topics, learning about why there's a difference between movement along the curve versus shift of the curve. It's going to be the same thing. But some of the non-price determinants that kind of affect the shape of supply are going to be completely different than what we had for demand. So supply. Easy way I remember about supply and the shape of supply is that supply has UP as the second and third letters. From left to right, supply goes up. So supply. This is the supply schedule now. Before we have the demand schedule, it's the supply schedule. So this is just the numbers that are then represented in this graph. Now, before for demand, there was three reasons why the demand is downward sloping. And that's all about kind of consumers trying to save money. That's their main incentive is they want to try to get the best deal. Now we're talking about suppliers. They're providing goods and services to the market, to the product market. So as suppliers, their main motivation is for profit. So at very low prices, they're not going to supply that much. There's not much profit. There's not any profit motive, profit incentive. At higher prices, it's still the exact same product. The product has not changed at all. At higher prices, they're more willing to supply their product. So their quantity supplied will increase as you change the price. So remember, using that same vocabulary, we're looking at a change in price is movement along the curve, and we say that's a change in quantity supplied, moving up. I see a lot of students who always get confused with thinking like, at that high price, no consumers will buy that. Don't worry about that. We're going to get that when we talk about equilibrium, when we combine the graphs together, how no one will buy at those higher prices. But for right now, at the supply schedule, at higher prices, they're willing to supply a lot because of the profit motive. Now, that's how reasons why, the problem is why it's upward sloping. Now, why it can possibly shift if we keep the price the same. So price is changing, we're going along here, but if we keep price the same, we could change one of these things, one of these 7 things, to then shift the supply curve. So at the same prices we had before, we could have a new quantity. So it could be, I'll just draw a rightward shift here. Something has changed in the market, shifted to the right, draw a better arrow, and now the quantity supplied has increased. S2, right there. So at that same price as we had before, there is now more being supplied. Because of that, we have changed some sort of conditions about the graph, so now there's more being supplied at each given price levels that we had before. So things that can change. This is insects here, so I stands for government intervention. We see this in the form of usually taxes or subsidies. But be careful, they got to be per unit taxes or per unit subsidies to really kind of affect the supply curve. N stands for the number of sellers. This is kind of similar for population for demand, but number of sellers, if there are more people willing to supply at each given price, obviously will be shifting to the right. Supply shock. I usually see these in terms of like natural disasters. If something kind of wipes things out, a big frost would kill like a whole harvest of some sort of crop that would then shift the supply curve. Producer expectations is whether they're predicting what's going to happen in the future will change the market right now. How willing are they able to supply to the market right now with what's going to happen to the future? So if they believe the price is going to go up in the future, they're going to hold back right now, and they'll supply more to the market in the future. So they'll hold back right now, supply less right now, because in the future they can make more profit off of it. Cost of production. This is like key when I think of usually for supply. If one of the inputs of production have increased in price, the supply curve would then shift to the left, because now it's more expensive at each quantity to then not be able to produce as much. So cost of production would then shift to the left. Sometimes it could be labor, any of those resources, anything like that. Technology, if it's more efficient or less efficient, could then shift the curve. And then S stands for interrelated supply goods. This one's a little bit confusing, but this is if a firm kind of could produce 2 different products. If one product's going to be more profitable, they'll take away the production of the lower, least productive least profitable product, and they'll produce more in the profitable product. So it's kind of like how their substitutes complements, but it's a little bit different for producers. This is it for supply. Be sure to know that if we're changing price, it's a movement along the curve. If one of these things is changing, that means we're holding price constant. We're shifting supply then. This will be insects. The other one was demand. Know those for the test, and that's all.